the Joel and Ellie minifigures from The Last of Us, I figured the most intuitive thing I could do for them would be to recreate the game cover, but with Lego minifigures. But I didn't love it for translating into minifigures because the characters both have their backs mostly to the camera, and it's the front of the minifigures that have the most detail and interesting printing. And also I just thought Joel was too far away from her, which would look extremely weird without the context of the environment they're in. So for those reasons, I decided to use the cover for the remastered version of the game, which I think rectifies all of these issues and just feels better for a final pose. For the base plastic colors and accessories, I originally gave Joel this hairpiece in black before changing that to dark brown later. I played around with the idea of combining and meshing this with the Anakin hairpiece, but I thought that just looked a bit messy and I'd rather keep things as true to real life Lego as possible. For Ellie, my instinct was to give her a bright red t-shirt and reddish brown hair, but these didn't feel right to me because the world of The Last of Us is relentlessly bleak. So I felt like I should have dialed back the saturation of these pieces wherever possible, just for the sake of matching the tone of the source material. I eventually landed on a dark red t-shirt and dark orange hairpiece for her. For Joel's face print, I started with Han Solo, as usual, and added a shitload of wrinkles, a stern expression, and some grey streaks in his beard. I was worried that his face was too detailed here, especially with the wrinkles, but it turns out the colour I used was barely darker than his nougat skin, so they ended up being a lot more subtle than I expected on the figure itself, which worked out really nicely, I think. I was also pretty happy with his beard, which I think shaped his face pretty well. I then started with Ellie's face, and this one was a lot harder because there wasn't a lot that I could add that would make her recognizable. I gave her some freckles that scarred through her eyebrow, and a kind of serious, slightly worried, maybe slightly scared expression, which was done mostly by changing the angle of her eyebrows. One thing about the face prints here is that they really were the most challenging aspect of these figures. Unlike the characters in Invincible or Apex Legends, for example, Joel and Ellie aren't wearing costumes that you can easily identify at a glance. They're just wearing regular, everyday clothes, meaning if I wanted to sell the idea that these figures were Joel and Ellie, it was extremely important to capture their likenesses in their face prints as much as possible. I posed them next, here's a before and after. I couldn't get Ellie to hold the rifle exactly like in the reference image, but this way has a bit more of that Lego charm to it, so it doesn't bother me. I then did the print for Joel's shirt, which was pretty handy. I added a few creases here and there to sell the texture of the shirt, a good few sand green splotches to sell the colour of the shirt, and I angled the brown grid pattern in such a way to sell the shape of it. Outside of that and a handful of scuff marks and stains, it was a simple enough design to replicate like it's just a shirt. Ellie's torso print was next, and this one was much more difficult, and I'm not sure I love how it turned out. The shape of her bag straps were kind of weird for some reason, and that design in the middle with the palm trees and the streaked sunset took a few tries to get right. But my main issue was with the muddied lower part from about her hips down. In the references I could find, it very clearly transitions into basically pure brown, so I tried to replicate that with some nougat printing over her dark red torso piece, but I think those colours were a bit too different. You can't really make it out on the post figure anyway, so it's not the end of the world. Ellie's leg prints were interesting because this is the first time that I used the mid-sized leg pieces for a character, meaning I had to use a completely different UV map for these prints. This also meant that I needed to create the legs as custom parts on the Mecabricks website, then export them as ZMBX files, import them into Blender, and pose them as best I can by just moving them around. Usually I can just apply the texture directly to the piece, so this is a bit more inconvenient, and because this leg piece isn't a part of the Mecafig figure, you don't get the same posability with each piece, but that wasn't a major issue here. In terms of the design of the print itself, her Converse sneakers were the obvious main thing to focus on. I think I may have added too many scuff marks to them, but I think it gets the point across well enough. Aside from them, the rest was just crease marks from her jeans and some white shapes for the wear and tear on them. And finally, there were Joel's leg prints, and these, again, were basically the same as Ellie's in the sense that his shoes were the main design element, and the rest was just creases and, in this case, some bloodstains vaguely in the shape of a hand. I decided not to print either of their arms because honestly I thought the dual molded look was more than good enough, and I thought there was no meaningful detail I could add to them. Like, the color scheme captures the look pretty perfectly without me needing to like draw on the folds of the sleeves or whatever. If Joel's other arm was visible, then I would have printed his watch at least, because that's at least a design element worth including, but it's hidden here, so I just saved myself the effort. And with all that said, there you go, the final figures. Usually I'd use Photoshop at some stage to touch it up and add details, but I didn't think this needed it. And actually, looking at it now, side by side with the reference, the lighting even matches up already. Like, Joel's face is in the shadow, whereas Ellie's is lit up to highlight her expression, and there's even a nice looking streak of light going across Joel's chest. These weren't intentional, but it was a really happy accident that it worked out this way. And for anyone curious, here's the same side by side but with some edits to make it look like I recreated the game cover in Lego. You can get the non-compressed full resolution images in the description, just in case you want to use them as like a phone wallpaper or something. And now we spin the wheel to see what's next. Well, kind of. I know what I'm doing next because I just want to do them, and I've actually already started on them. This is a purely cosmetic wheel spin to reveal it to you, but there it goes anyway. So yeah, thanks for watching, and farewell.